PWP family, it's your girl Nia back at it again with another Converse with Purpose moment. This moment is going to be as brief as I possibly can make it, and y'all know I like to talk, so proceed with caution. But thank you all for being so patient as I took a week off to kind of just give myself some grace and just have a moment to really unwind. I'm practicing grace by reminding myself of things that I can do in those moments, and also trying not to stress when I cannot do certain things. So thank you so much for being patient with me, and I hope that you continue to give yourself grace every single day and continue to practice self-love and be intentional about your goals. So we are in the third month of the year, and at this point I wanted to kind of give you not an understanding, or give you a breakdown of how I teach my students how to tackle each and every semester, and how I also try to tackle every year. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips. Check it out. So I know I use the word tips, and that might not be the best word to describe what I'm going to present to you all. But what I do with my students is I try to break down their semesters into 4 quarters. And in that, we focus on one thing at a time, and we also are very goal driven, and I want to say intentional and accountable about the things that we set to pursue and accomplish that semester. So I figured, why not try that with my PWP fam? Because it works for myself and it also works for my students. So why not share the wealth? So let's talk a little bit about how I teach my students. So there are 4 months in a semester, and a lot of my students have major aspirations. They all want 4.0s, y'all. And I truly do believe all of my students can get 4.0s if they apply themselves and do 4.0 effort now. And that's when I come in to kind of support them and figure out how they're going to get to it. So the first thing we do is we explore. That is phase 1. We explore. So in that, we say, hey, I want a 4.0 semester GPA. And I'm like, cool, we can do that, no doubt. Have you read your syllabi? So essentially, the first thing I ask is, how have you done research? Have you read the information that's been presented to you? Have you looked within yourself to say this is realistic to who I am and your situation? And also, have you actually taken the time to see if this is what you want? Because a lot of times we set these goals because we think that's the right thing to do. In actuality, sometimes it's not the right thing for you to do. So exploration stage, we explore and identify. And in that exploration, we're seeing the scenarios, kind of trying to figure out if this is for me, if this is not for me, things of that nature. And then once we pick that goal, we stick with it. But the problem is, we want things, but we don't explore how to get to it. So that's the next thing we have to do. How are you going to get to that 4.0? And that's when the conversation gets a little rough, and I sit back in my chair like, so what's your plan? And a lot of times they have answers. My students have improved because they know me. And then sometimes they're not quite sure. And if you have some hesitation, that's perfectly normal. You just have to do some more research. And that's all you do in part 1 of the month or part 1 of your year, is just explore. Take the time out to see if this is for you, see how you can get to it, and also look for the resources to help you get there. Because you don't want to jump to a goal without completely understanding the process to get to it. Because a lot of times that's when we all have the tendency to give up way too soon. So the next phase, I don't remember which word I said. So the next phase or stage that we talk about is implementation. So as I previously stated, during the exploration stage, we are trying to figure out how we're going to get from point A to point Z. And that's what we do in the implementation stage. We simply start to implement those things that we said we're going to do. Now, this is when, in being intentional and also practicing self-care and self-love, and also giving yourself grace, come into handy. We all know that first month of every year, January, is the hardest month of the year. Why is that? Because we talked about that a little bit in our story. It's because we're trying to take on the things from 2020 2019, 2018. Sometimes we going far back, maybe to 1993. That was a good year. But we're taking things and luggage from previous years, taking it into the new year, while trying to create this new version of ourselves and trying to warp that into something. That ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work. So it's always important to be present with yourself in order to be intentional about your goals, in order to implement the things that you said you're going to do. Be present and be intentional. Now, as we're implementing, things will get hard. It's not going to be easy. That's when you stop to practice self-love, and that's when you also stop to give yourself grace. So for example, there was one day, I think it was this Monday. Yeah, it's Monday. I forgot to prepare my Monday moment, and I was scrambling in the morning, knowing I have to be in the office, trying to do a lot of stuff. I was like, you know what, Nia? You dropped the ball. That's okay. Do better tomorrow. Gave myself grace. And that very night, in order to prepare for the next day and practice some self-care, self-love, I affirmed the process that I'm doing and how much I've accomplished this far. I'm very proud of myself. And then I also made sure I got to bed at a decent time to be up and prepare my content for the next day. So as you're implementing, be intentional, practice self-care, give yourself some love, and give yourself grace, because that next phase is hard. It's not easy. Okay, y'all, this is the phase that my students are, they be in denial and not the river. You probably didn't know, but it's fine. Okay, so at this point, this is when I start having tough conversations with my students, typically around the October, March area, because that's midterms. And I say, you know, what are your grades looking like? And recently they've been doing real good, y'all, so kudos to my chickadees. But in the past, they'd be like, oh, I'm doing fine. Elaborate, please. What is fine? Oh, I got like a D in biology, but I'm gonna get that up. We're in the third month of the semester and you have a D? And you gonna get that up? So this is when I start talking to them about modification. Modify. It's important that when we see things that are not working, we change it. Point blank period. The story doesn't have to go longer than that. That's it. Change what is not working, because change is inevitable and it is required. Some things are not going to work. Going to the gym 3 times a week might have worked in January, but it might not work in the month of February or the month of March, and that's fine. Change up the routine. The goal does not have to change. The process to get to the goal can change. Remember that. Okay, y'all, so we've explored. We've implemented a lot. Made a lot of modifications too, when necessary. So 3 phases, 3 stages in, we are tired. And that's when you ease on down into the last phase, which is reflection. So at this point, you are tapping into your journey and just looking back on what you've done so far. That's it. You're literally just, you know, applauding yourself for what you've done, patting yourself on the back, and also making an effort to push to that next stage, which might be starting all over again or implementing again. So, but how I do it with my students is when we get to that last month of the semester, I just check in. Hey, you know, how's everything going? How are you feeling at this point? Ask yourself that. How are you feeling at this point? What are you most proud of? Who supported you at this point? What was the hardest obstacle that you face at this point? Well, this semester, really. How did you get over it? And what are you looking forward to? And in those moments, I see the wheels turning on my students, and they start to acknowledge the things that they've done. They start to realize that they got a lot done in a little bit of time. They realize that although they might not get the recognition that they deserve sometimes from other people, that doesn't mean they can't get it from themselves. So it's important that we also say, you did that, girl. You. So always be sure to applaud yourself, and then keep that cycle going. Just can't stop, won't stop. So in the meantime, remember to give yourself grace. Remember to practice self-care and self-love on a weekly and daily basis if you can. You really can. I want you guys to practice on a weekly and daily basis. And also to continue to be intentional about, you know, your personal and professional goals. Continue to make sure you're doing all that you can today, tomorrow, and wherever else to get to those goals. And thank you all for listening. Love you so much. I'll see y'all next time.